Today we're going to use a CNC machine to make a concrete fire pit. I started by modeling fire bricks in the shape of an octagon, and then modeled different shapes around them to make an interesting looking fire pit. I modeled this project in Form Z, which is fine, but I'm going to be switching towards Autodesk Fusion soon. I then used those shapes to model pieces for a CNC'd plywood mold. I uploaded drawings to a free piece of software called Easel, which lets me lay out the project for CNCing. I used my X-carve to cut the mold pieces out of 3/4 inch thick plywood. I used my Japanese handsaw to cut through the tabs that the CNC machine leaves that hold the pieces of plywood in place. I lightly sanded the edges of the cut pieces. I used wood glue to glue the plywood pieces together. I started doing them in groups of 3 or 4 before then gluing these groups together. This way I minimized the amount of slippage when I clamped them together. I sanded the insides of the mold with my orbital sander. I want to use the same mold to make 8 of these different blocks, so I applied 3 coats of polyurethane to make sure that they were nice and waterproof. I used Flex Seal on the parts of the molds that get compressed together. I'm going to clamp the molds down to a piece of melamine and then use a little bit of silicone to get a good seal. I'm casting these concrete blocks face down, so I use some wire to wrap a fire brick to a scrap piece of plywood so that it'll suspend the brick over the bottom of the mold. I'm using Quikrete 5000 for each of these blocks. I used about 3/4 of a bag for each one. It's important to really push all the concrete down into the bottom of the mold and then vibrate it the best you can to get out all the air bubbles. I used my orbital sander without a sanding pad to vibrate the mold. After about 12 hours I removed the plywood part of the mold, but I left the block on the melamine for another 12 hours before moving it. I then scraped the molds clean and got them ready to cast another block. The molds held up really well, and I was able to actually use the same piece of melamine over and over again for all 8 blocks. I also started soaking the fire bricks in water so that they wouldn't suck so much moisture out of the wet concrete. It took me about 10 days to produce all 8 blocks, and each one weighs about 70 pounds. I laid out all the blocks to where I wanted them, and then used a putty knife to mark the perimeter of all the blocks. I then moved the blocks out of the way and dug about 3 inches deep into the soil. I then poured in a few bags of gravel, which I stamped as firmly as I could. I then replaced the blocks on top of the gravel. It took a little bit of adjusting to get them all reasonably level. The fire bricks will protect the concrete from the majority of the heat, which will be down by the coals, but I recommend letting the concrete cure a full 30 days before lighting a fire in it. I really like that this fire pit is modular, and that even someone that rents their home could install it and then later move it if need be. For more detailed instructions, check out my website, and if you want to see what I'm working on next, be sure to follow me on Instagram. If you want to learn about the concrete products that I use, be sure to check out quikrete.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks, bye.